The Ojota venue of the Yoruba Nation rally turned rowdy on Saturday as police tear-gassed and shot in the air to disperse protesters. Police also sprayed water cannon on the protesters to forestall the breakdown of order. Security operatives, including men of the Nigeria Police Force, Nigerian Army, and the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, and their van were deployed to the venue of the protest. The police also arrested some protesters at the venue of the rally and were kept in the waiting Black Maria. It was a sad day nonetheless when the 14-year-old girl was found dead in the pool of her own blood, allegedly killed by the police bullet. Analysts now say that the regular crisis or violence that trails protests in the country is becoming a thing to worry about. And they wonder if Nigerian security agencies are not capable of supervising a peaceful protest. Barrister Ubani joins us now to speak on what the Constitution says about protests in the democracy. Good morning, Barrister Ubani.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. Good morning.
Good to see you. Tell us, Barrister, eventually the Yoruba Nation rally held in some form yesterday, but without Chief Sunday Adeyemo, Sunday Igboho. Regrettably, one life was lost. What's your take on how everything panned out yesterday? It started very slowly. It didn't look like anything would happen, but all of a sudden, a coterie of, people, some wearing traditional, attires, basically, oozing out the Yoruba-ness in them, demanding a Yoruba nation without Sunday Igboho, and then things turned awry. What's your assessment of what happened yesterday, and where are we in terms of law and order and the interpretation of the law?
Yeah, thank you once again for having me. I want to stress the fact that what happened yesterday was clearly unfortunate. And we want to emphasize the fact that protest, demonstration, or whatever name you call it, is a constitutional thing, especially under democracy. It's a feedback mechanism. Those in governance have been given power by the people. Power flows from the people. But wherever there is any complaint or wherever there is any grievance, the people have to actually express it to those they have elected to govern them. And those that they have elected to govern them have to get it from the feedback mechanism from the people, whether they are doing right or wrong. And of course, readdress some of the issues they are complaining about. But it's becoming unfortunate that Nigeria now seems to have outlawed protest. Because anytime Nigerian citizens want to peacefully protest and express their grievances over governance of the country, they have always deployed all manner of security apparatus to the venue. And most time, turn the peaceful protest into a violent one, and lives have been always lost. If you remember the NSAS crisis, some of the other crises that have happened in Nigeria know that most times the attitude of the government towards peaceful protesters that usually make it to be rowdy and violent, and in the end, lives and properties will be destroyed. And so, something that should be worrying for us as a country in democracy, we should emphasize the fact that protest is legitimate, is legal. International treaties and protocols, and even our local framework, and associate, and then really also express themselves. These are constitutional guaranteed rights and has not in any way been outlawed. Now, the Public Order Act itself, that was the legal framework that governs peaceful protest, has actually underwent a judicial interpretation and pronouncement. And the Court of Appeal in 2007 expressly made it clear that Nigerians do not require any permit whatsoever in order to engage in peaceful protest. As I speak to you, that particular decision has not been court in the land. That has remained the position of the law. Nigerians today have the right to protest. The only requirement is that the police will always provide security whenever they engage in protest in order to give government a feedback mechanism as to whether they are governing right or they're governing wrong. So, it's and make our leaders to know that protest is legitimate as long as it's peaceful. And if it turns rowdy, the police will have the power under the law to use some level of measures of force that is clearly commensurate with threat to life in order to disperse them and not to waste lives, which has always been the resultant effect of most of the protests in Nigeria.
Despite that raid on the Yoruba activist Sunday Igboho's residence last week in Oyo State by the DSS, people did come out to protest. In your opinion, what does that imply? And I'd also like a reaction to the manner in which the DSS raided Sunday Igboho's house last week.
The truth of the matter is that if any person is alleged to have actually committed crime, the security agencies can arrest that individual. But there are legal framework and legal processes and procedures that the law has made provision for in order for you to arrest an individual. You don't just go in a wrong manner in order to effect arrest. It's either the person is shown a search warrant, which gives you the permission to enter into the personal abode of that individual to avoid the issue of invasion of his privacy, which is also a constitutionally guaranteed right that nobody has a right to be invaded. Then go into the house, search whatever you want to search, arrest whosoever you think have committed a crime. But when security agencies engage in arrest that shows illegality clearly, the way they did with the justices of the court in this country, and the way they did with Sunday Igboho by jumping into through his friends, then engaging in shooting and killing, and then even admitting that they killed two persons. The security agencies themselves agree. There's something fundamentally wrong with such a process and procedure. I think that if somebody is alleged to have committed a crime, there are procedures and processes for arrest. You go there and announce yourself, and then show your search warrant, and then engage in doing what the law authorizes you to do. But I don't think that the way and manner that the DSS, or whoever was involved, or whichever security, because now you say it's a combined, security forces that actually invaded his home and committed what was alleged to have been committed and all that. I don't think that is a proper procedure. We should begin to do things within the parameters of law. To me, I don't think it was right, the manner and process they used, in effecting, going to his home. And they say it was 1:30 a.m. and they jumped fence and entered it, making themselves look like an unknown gunman. I don't think that is the proper procedure for security agencies to arrest any individual who is alleged to have committed any crime. You do it properly in the daytime, ensure you have access and do the right thing, which the law permits you under our laws to do.
All right, Barrister Ubani, let me take you up on this. At what point do we separate what is legally permissible from what is commonsensical? Yes, you may want to argue that what the Ilanomo Yoruba, Ilanomo Odua group did yesterday was bold, was probably courageous, in spite of what had happened. But then if you look at it, given what happened to Sunday Igboho, who is now on the run, when his house was raided, we may argue all we want about the propriety of how that his house was stormed. But then 13 people are in custody, his close allies. 2 people reportedly dead. And given the soreness that Lagos is still experiencing, from the NSAS protest of last October, which of course necessitates that a lot of people will be skeptical when it comes to large gatherings that might be hijacked. Do you think the Ilanomo Odua people did the right thing? Yes, you might be allowed, as far as the law is concerned. But again, given what Lagos went through in October, all the destructions, not because the protests were not peaceful or not right, but because they were hijacked. And it was obvious that the police was overwhelmed. And also given the fact that Sunday Igboho is on the run, the person who was supposed to lead that rally was not there, and then people still went out making their demands. Was that reasonable, really?
Yes, we need to put the narratives right. If you remember that the NSAS crisis and protest was very peaceful, what were they demanding? They were saying that the police brutality has to end. We need to reform the anti-robbery, people brutalizing, sometimes, using some unorthodox method in order to effect arrest, brutalize Nigerians, take money from them, sometimes kill them, extrajudicially and all that. So they were saying that we don't want this. And it was peaceful until the same government introduced element of violence, thuggery into the entire thing. Then, they call a dog a bad name in order to hang it. They've been using that now to discourage people from, getting a feedback from the people by saying, oh, what happened in the NSAS where there was destruction of lives and property, forgetting who actually instigated this destruction of lives and property. And they now use it now to hold every Nigerian hostage, that nobody has any right once anymore to peacefully protest. And so to me, I don't think that narrative is something that Nigerians are ready to provide. As long as we're in democracy and as long as there are issues that Nigerians have to make known to those who are governing them to address, and they remain peaceful. The most important thing that they must be peaceful protest. They are not carrying arms and ammunition. They have the right to ventilate whatever grievances they have. So I don't want a situation where government will be using the crisis that erupted, during the end time crisis now to hold Nigerians down to hostage and ransom that they will never allow any protest. And anytime you want to protest, they now remind you of what was the outcome of the NSAS. And at the end, make you now feel so afraid for you to do what you're supposed to do under democracy. We cannot in any way be intimidated over what happened during the NSAS crisis, because it was the government that instigated what actually was the fallout. And we must begin to emphasize the right thing and tell them the truth, that this is actually what happened. That Nigerians have right at any point in time. There is no right time for people to really give government the feedback as to whether they are governing them well or not governing them well. If they are governing them well, of course, Nigerians will not have any reason whatsoever to be on the street. If things are moving the way we're supposed to, have it in this nation, no reasonable person, unless it's an insane person that wants to go and protest. What are you protesting for? When there are, things are happening, right in your country, you have employment, the government listens to you. You talk about restructuring, government says, yes, we have to look at it, and restructure the country. You express certain things that are not right with governance, and government say, yes, we're addressing the issue. Even with this Sunday war, our government ever called them and said, what are you even saying? What is your demand? What do you want, from the fair? Because I don't think anyone is interested in the dismemberment of this country. Nobody, no sane person. I've always said it, that we are better off being a united country. But I want a country that is united where there is fairness and equity and justice, where I'm not a second-class citizen, where nobody, whether an Hausa man will be regarded as a second-class citizen, a Yoruba man should not, an Igbo man should not, because Nigeria belongs to all of us. So where I am accepted, where I am loved, where I'm included in governance, where I have the right to vote for the kind of leadership we want, why would I want to be on the street in order to protest? That would be absolute madness. But when the government is not doing something that is right and say, look, you are not doing it right, sir. This is the way we want it to be, because power flows from the people. Then you have a right to listen to them. So you cannot use this NSAS crisis and hold Nigerians to ransom in perpetuity, that they have no right anymore to peacefully protest, except they want to do it in a violent manner. Then I support the government, trying to disperse them. But as long as the protest is peaceful, they are not carrying arms and ammunition. Government of the day is better advised to allow Nigerians to freely express them, because it's a guaranteed right. The right to freely assemble, right to freely associate, right to freely express yourself. It is there in the Constitution. It has not been outlawed. So as long as those rights are there and has not been outlawed by any other enactment of National Assembly, or in a reasonable society, in a justifiable manner, in favor of public order and safety, or to allow the right of others also to exist, then government has no right to tell people not to protest, hinging on the ground that, because of what transpired in the NSAS crisis, we are no longer allowed to protest. I don't think that is reasonable. I don't think that is justifiable in a democratic society, sir.
Should the security forces handle protests like yesterday? The police fired tear gas, water cannons, shots were fired in the air. How should they really handle protests like this moving forward? And, the death of that young girl who's been identified now as Jumoke, the street trader, there have been some eyewitness account that the girl died after the police allegedly fired shots. How should the government handle this? Now, the police have denied that, they had any involvement with her death.
As I said earlier, the Court of Appeal, ruled in 2007. I think it's the case of IGP versus all Nigerian. There's a political party that actually went all Nigerians in political parties. They went to court in order to challenge, the issue of protest, whether you require permission of the IG or the Commissioner of Police in the state for you to protest. And the Court of Appeal said, no, you don't. You don't require any permission. What actually is required is that police must always accompany any of those group or a citizen that want to protest in order to secure the life of that individual and also secure the life of others. Now, as long as the protest is peaceful, what the Nigerian police ought to do is to maintain law and order, ensure that no lives is lost, and that the particular protest does not turn riotous. Now, going by the account of what we read in the newspaper yesterday, it was when the traditional chiefs emerged that Nigerian police now, started to fire whatever they want to fire. These are people who are not carrying arms. Looking at them, I don't think that those old men and women were carrying arms and ammunition. So what was the purpose of firing tear gas? What was the purpose of firing cannon? Whatever they had to fire. What was the purpose of even shooting on the air? What was there any reason for it? Was there any display of arms and ammunition? Was there any firing from those who were protesting peacefully? So there was no reason. Even journalists were there. So what was the purpose of firing? Even their own regulation says you do not need to fire, above on the air. You don't need to. It is even prohibited by the Nigerian police regulations on use of firearms during protests. They expressly prohibited from firing, on the air over the head of any individual. Now you can only fire a leader and only on the knee when it turns violent. Play of arms and ammunition, and you identify who the leader is and then fire him only on the knee. That is what is even allowed, even though the international protocol prohibits it. But Nigerian, in their own regulation, says that leader must be identified and then the only shooter on the knee. So my take in all this is that Nigerians have a right. We need to really summarize this fact. Nigerians have a right to legitimately protest, but that protest also must be peaceful and must be within the parameters of law. Then secondly, Nigerian police have a right to accompany protesters and ensure protection of lives and property, including the lives of those who are protesting. And then do not allow the issue of protest to be hijacked by any of the hoodlums, in the society. That is key. Now, if it turns riotous and becomes violent, Nigerian police is allowed to use minimum force that is commensurate with the threat in order to quell it and disperse those who are protesting, in order to ensure that there is a peaceful atmosphere wherever they are protesting. And so this is the law, and this is the position of the law with regards to protest. So it's legitimate, but Nigerian police must always exercise caution in dealing with those who are protesting. And those who are protesting also must understand that their right to protest is not unlimited. It's not unlimited. In going about their protest, they must not in any way harass those who are also going about their normal businesses and all that. They should not in any way interfere with them or infringe on their own rights, because where your own right stops is where the right of others also starts. So there must be this mutual understanding of what protest is all about. That it is a legitimate way of expressing grievance. It's a legitimate way of making government to have a feedback on issue of governance. And then it's also a legitimate way for government to know that people are not happy with whatever they are doing, and they change and make sure that the people in the country are happy. If you don't do it that way, then the country is dead. I tell you this, whatever progress humanity has made is as a result of protest. Whatever the respect of human rights you have today in the world, in developed economies and all that, people died for it, people fought for it, people insisted that governance should be in their interest. And that is why we're having good governance all over the world, in some of these developed countries, except in some of the African continent and some of those other nations where there is no good governance. But some other countries that have actually progressed in our own time, we have seen it is about protest. It's about feedback. It's about making government know that this is the way we want to be governed. This is what we require in governance. And if we don't express it, government will not even know what is actually wrong with the system. And so, to me, it is important we make it known to those who are in government that legitimacy is accorded to those who go about protesting peacefully. You should not in any way kill them. You should not in any way deter them. You should not in any way inhibit them. You should not in any way prohibit them. should not in any way kill them because they are telling you what you should need to know, but which you don't want to hear from them. I don't think that is the proper way for you not to hear from those who have elected. That is my take with the issue of protest. And we must begin to emphasize this fact that we must allow people to peacefully, give government a feedback mechanism in governance, whether they are doing right or that they are not doing right.
For that, like you said, the right to protest has been hampered upon, and it's been going on over the years with the current administration and the past. And, last week, the Lagos State Police Command had issued a statement saying that the Yoruba rally will not be allowed to hold. Now, is there any law that permits that?
It is clearly unconstitutional. It's clearly illegal. The pronouncement of the Commissioner of Police or whosoever made that particular statement, is not in tandem with the law. As long as the law has been laid by the Court of Appeal that you do not require permission of the Nigerian police, except where the governor can only prescribe the route and time, then the announcement of the Commissioner of Police is clearly not in tandem with the law. You can't prohibit people from expressing themselves. You cannot, under democracy. Unless we operate in dictatorship, then you have to annul the Constitution. You have to annul all other laws, that actually give people the right to legitimately protest. If we have not annulled those laws, then you cannot, by sheer pronouncement, prohibit people from coming out to protest. But as I said earlier, the protest must be peaceful. They must not carry arms and ammunition, because there are consequences also. If in the course of protest, you now breach the law, you carry arms, you kill any person, of course, you will in any way be arrested and charged for that crime. So you must not commit crime while expressing yourself over the grievance of governance. You must express it peacefully. You must, articulate it, and then make government to know what you are saying. Now, Ojota has been designated as a place for people to come out peacefully and protest. That, again, is very important. But I hear that very early in the morning, either by 6 a.m., police and other security agencies have taken control of that environment, not allowing people to come there in order to express themselves. That is not right. That is not right. We have even designated a place where people can freely. We see it in developed countries where people come to a square. Black Lives Matter. We see people, coming out to express themselves. But here we are trying to take away all the platforms through which people can protest. Now they have banned Twitter. They are threatening to ban all other social media platforms. They are taking away the right for people to peacefully protest. Are we under a dictatorship? Are we really under democracy, where people can, freely express themselves? And as I said earlier, those provisions of the law have not been annulled. They have not in any way annulled it. It's under the military, they annulled the Constitution, but the Constitution is still in operation, and they swore. All these present leaders swore to uphold the provisions of the Constitution. So why are we doing many things that are contrary to the provisions of the Constitution? So to me, that pronouncement by the Commissioner of Police is clearly not in tandem with the law. And I will keep on saying it, and will keep on emphasizing it, that protest is legitimate, is legal, is allowed under the law, as long as it's very peaceful. But it's clearly not unlimited right. You must also exercise that right of peaceful protest, not disturbing the right of others, not creating crisis, not, disturbing the peace of the country, not, probably threatening the security of the nation. Of course, you must do it within the parameters of the law. That is actually the cautious aspect of it that we must emphasize. But as for right to protest, it's clearly legitimate, and no government, no power has any right to stop people from carrying out that responsibility that is allowed under democracy.
All right, Barrister Ubani, I mean, that's an expansive one. But just to have your last thoughts in a minute or two, Max, I like the fact that you said we should put things in a minute, to put things in context. But then the context to all this, either for Nnamdi Kanu or for Sunday Igboho and this protest, is that, you said nobody wants Nigeria dismembered. But then the narrative that we've been hearing is about Biafra going its own way or having the Yoruba nation. And not only that, people are threatening that there will not be elections, and those who disagree with their position, will be dealt with in certain manner. Given that background, therefore, don't you think that the police or even members of the public who may have a different approach to how you negotiate the Nigerian story will want to have a rethink about this sort of protests, given that those protests are built, against that background. What do you think of that? In 1 minute, please.
That is a very intelligent question. As I said earlier, I have always listened to these people, Nnamdi Kanu, then those who are his supporters, and then Sunday Igboho. Most of them are not really interested in the disbandment of this country. They are not interested in a country that is not united. The genesis of their agitation stems from the fact that there has been this probably inherent government policy that actually discriminates, that makes some certain person to feel that they are more Nigerian than others, where there is clearly a manifest sense of injustice, either in appointment or in employment process in the country, even contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. Now, the issue of lives or properties being secured, the government is not doing anything about it. Sunday Igboho's main grounds is that why is it that the Fulani herdsmen have been allowed and given leeway to come into Southwest, kill and rape some of the farmers, and the government is doing nothing about it. Even when you report to the Nigerian police, those guys are being released, and then you, who may have been reported, become a victim, and you be the arrested person. So why will you have such a country? Why will you feel intimidated in your own country? The Nigerian government should address it. And Nigerian government has not been addressing it. Rather, our president is saying, we are looking for the grazing route. He has asked the Attorney General to pass the law and look for grazing route, where these herdsmen will come and take over your land, and drive you from your land, and and do certain things that are clearly criminal. But the government doesn't, call them, terrorists. Now, with regards of IPOB, the same thing. You branded them terrorists when they were not even carrying arms, but there are those who are carrying arms contrary to the law. You don't call them terrorists. So this issue of discrimination in government policy and some of the things that are clearly at variance with logic and clear thought makes people to now say, okay, if you don't want us to stay together as a nation, if you don't want us to stay as a country,
thank you very much.
I am respected.
Thanks for the cerebral contribution so far. It's time now.
Separate ways.